Welcome back to Chop for Time, Episode 1, 2022 edition. It's been a few months, years, 84 in fact, since we've done an episode of this. It's been a couple weeks. But anyhow, welcome back to Chop for Time. I'm going to be sitting down with Pastor Thomas here in just a few moments. We're going to be talking about Sunday's message, coming from Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Hope starts here.
Back at it again. It's been a while.
Here we are.
It feels like we haven't done this in quite a long time.
Yeah, it's been three. Is this three weeks? Something
three-ish
like
weeks, something like that. There was Christmas. There was a couple of. It's just been a lot going on at the end. December was busy.
Chaos.
Yeah. So there was a lot happening, but yeah, it's nice to be back at it.
Yeah, it's good to be back here with you, man, for sure.
Yeah. We're hopefully talking about all of our online content, what that's looking like for 2022.
Yeah, we'll get to that, no doubt. Yeah.
And Chop for Time is back, so we'll be.
That's a big part of that. So if this is, if this is your first time watching, listening, then we encourage you to do that. Make this a weekly part of your devotion, of your time with God, of diving deeper into His Word, because that's ultimately what the purpose of this video is to kind of dive a little bit deeper into what we talked about on Sunday.
Yeah, I kind of like to think of it as like an extended edition of
exactly,
the sermon,
director's cut type thing.
Yeah. And this week we actually started a new study or series that we're calling Grow Together. Yeah. Correct?
Yeah.
Where we're sort of looking at our mission statement that people have seen everywhere, this idea of, your story isn't over yet, hope starts here. Yeah. And really sort of fleshing that out a little bit and explaining what we mean by that, and our hopes and plans for what it looks like to be a part of First Church. Which we're pretty excited about.
Absolutely.
And seeing. So, and we've already had some people come up and talk about how they can get plugged in.
Yeah, which is refreshing.
Yeah.
Listen, if you ever want to encourage your pastor, come and ask, hey, what can I do to serve the church? How can I get plugged in? How can I, get invested in this place? Right. Yeah, that'll make me smile. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. So things have been going well, and we're in this new series. We started with Romans 12.
Yep.
The whole 11 and 12, or just 12?
The whole series is going to be kind of camped out in Romans chapter 12.
Very cool.
Yeah, we started with verses 1 and 2, which are two pretty familiar verses overall. Let's get to Romans here. There we go. As I hit the microphone stand there. You want to read 1 and 2 for us?
Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will.
Yeah.
It's a good one. It's a classic, as we would say.
It is.
But yeah, I feel like the bulk of Sunday was really focused in on what it looks like to invest in and be a part of a church family, which it's good to talk about.
Yeah.
And you kind of ended with the challenge of, don't just be an attender. Be more involved. But do you want to go over you had 3 or 4?
Yeah, I had 4
points.
Reasons that hope starts here.
Right.
The first was hope starts here because of God's mercy. In verse 1, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God. Hope starts in our lives because of God's mercy. And we did a little bit of the way that mercy and grace feed off of one another, that one cannot truly exist in a biblical sense without the other. And how...
you use that sort of quick explanation of, let me see if I got this right, mercy or grace is receiving what we... No, sorry.
You were right.
Grace is receiving what we don't deserve.
Correct.
And mercy is not receiving what we do deserve.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I'm sure I got those
I
the
get
right
those
way.
too. Yeah,
I'm sure I was getting them the right way around.
yeah, and that's, we are recipients of God's grace, which we do not deserve. And in Christ, we are relieved and removed from God's wrath,
Right.
which is his mercy.
Right.
And we do deserve his wrath. So we can't truly experience biblical grace without first experiencing his mercy.
Right.
And I mean, it happens in a same moment, but it's two sides of the same coin. And, we use that, you really can't appreciate being forgiven until you understand or realize your need to be forgiven. Forgiveness doesn't hit with you until you realize that I really stand in need of forgiveness. And we looked at Genesis 3, we looked at a couple passages, one out of Titus chapter 3, verses 1 through 7, one out of Ephesians chapter 2, 1 through 5, that was just really powerful. But it was bringing back to our remembrance just the fact of we're not good enough. And, and I clarify that that's not a state of, of your identity, which we're going to dive into a little bit more next week, that's not a statement of you being worthless. Because ultimately, the value of something is the price that's paid for it. So, with us being bought by the blood of Christ, that's a pretty high value just because of the price that had to be paid for it. But it's also a recognition that without that blood, that there's nothing that we can do to earn that salvation. So, just kind of beating that drum of understanding that we're not qualified, we're not worthy, we can never act, do, speak good enough that's going to earn God's grace.
Right.
So we spent some time there. Hope starts here because of God's mercy. And then the second point was hope starts here because we can know that mercy personally. And that's, that salvation moment, that ongoing nature. And I really think that that's what Romans 12, 1 and 2 is really calling us to, is not so much a one-time experience by the mercy of God, but it's this ongoing reliance upon the mercy of God, because none of us ever really live a day where we can say that we've qualified ourselves.
Yeah.
That we don't need God's mercy today because, man, I did so good. And then, we can say that hope starts here because we can be committed to God. We can commit our lives to Him. And that's showing this reasonable sacrifice. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Some versions say which is your reasonable sacrifice. And then, lastly, hope starts here because we can go all in with God. And then that was really where the challenge started becoming of this all in concept.
Yeah. And you had a few simple steps there, and one of them, which I thought was interesting, was you use the word uncomfortable.
Yes.
Like be ready to be uncomfortable a lot for Christ.
Yeah.
And you shared a story about being uncomfortable, but or being in an uncomfortable situation that God was able to use for something really cool.
Right.
And obviously if people want to hear that, they should go. Well, actually, they can't really go listen to the sermon because our technology...
So here's what we're doing. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
We may let's schedule this to release afterwards.
Okay.
But I'm getting ready to re-record my message from yesterday because technology is the worst.
Yep.
And we tried a couple different avenues yesterday. We tried a couple different avenues last week even. Didn't work. So the last content you're going to see of ours online from a sermon until this afternoon, hopefully, is going to be from 19th of December. So it's been a nightmare, and we'll talk a little bit more about what the plan of remedy is for that. But yeah, I shared that what you heard in my message earlier. That story of being uncomfortable.
Yeah. So what What does that look like for the layperson, if that makes sense? I mean, other than your example, like
Right.
should we seek being uncomfortable, or should we be prepared to be uncomfortable, or maybe a bit of both? Or
Yeah, I think it's both. I think that we need to be prepared to be uncomfortable more than we seek to be uncomfortable. But I also think that there are moments that we need to seek it out.
right,
Just
pushing the boundaries of
right.
morality.
I remember I was at a pastor's conference one time, and I was sitting at a table with some gentlemen, and they were all skiers. I'm not a skier. Never skied. Don't know if I ever plan on skiing, to be honest
Right.
with you. But so I, was not participating in the conversation, but I was enjoying the conversation, listening to them, and they were all talking about they'd all been to this one particular ski club in common, and they were all talking about the different trails. And one guy, I remember in particular, he was very much bragging about, I went, to this ski club on this particular trip, and I didn't fall one time. And they all kind of started making fun of him. And I was like, this doesn't seem right. The dude didn't fall. Yeah, that's a win in my book. That's going to be, if I ever ski, that's going to be my goal.
Yeah.
But the reason that they were kind of giving him a hard time was they were just saying, like, if you didn't fall, then you didn't push yourself enough. You weren't really skiing to some kind of indication. Like, you weren't taking any risk. You weren't taking any chances. You were just kind of leisurely doing it. And I was like, that's an interesting point, because I think that sometimes within our faith we're the same way. Right. We view success as not falling, whereas maybe we're not falling because we're really not pushing ourselves in our faith. Maybe we're not placing ourselves in uncomfortable positions. So
we kind of talked about that.
Yeah, what is it? I'm sorry, it's in Proverbs where it says, where the oxen are absent, there are clean stalls. Something like that, which basically means like where the oxen are, there's a mess to clean up after they get done. So the evidence of them being there is they make a mess sometimes. But if they're never there, there's no messes to clean up.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about that a bit with the youth on Sunday morning, actually, at Sunday school. We were talking, because the new year, we were sort of talking about different goals and aspirations for each young person. And surprisingly, almost none of them had even considered setting any goals or having any plan, or not quite New Year's resolution, but just goals in general. And this wasn't quite so much a spiritual exercise, but more of like a, what goals do you want to set for your school, or for work, or, stuff like that. And we were kind of saying, like, well, we should all, in every aspect of our lives, see our limit with whatever it is. So whether it's videography, right, making online content, set our limit, or see what our limit is, and then set our goal to be a step above it, right? Push ourselves just a little bit extra, because otherwise we just can't grow,
right?
Because if we never push ourselves past our limit, then we're never going to improve. And the exact same thing is true of our spiritual lives. And if our limit is talking to people about Jesus within a church context, then we should maybe push that bar and talk about Jesus to people outside of a church context. Maybe start with people that you know and you're comfortable with, and then think once you get used to theirs, like, oh, like maybe I'll talk to the cashier at Ralph's about Jesus. And you just keep pushing that bar and stretching yourself to get uncomfortable.
Well, and that, being, one of the other steps was being committed to the vision of the church, and, serving the church and its vision. And, in that section, I was making the comment of, we love what takes place in here on Sunday mornings. I look forward to that. That's one of the highlights of my week, is to be with my church family on Sunday mornings. But we also have to have this recognition that so little of what we do as serving God's kingdom or the vision of the church should be within the church itself. And that's a challenging part for us. Right. It really is. Hopefully one that we can really kind of nudge a little bit as we go along this year.
Yeah.
Myself included.
Yeah. So what aspects did you end up chopping?
A couple things that came from this that I really really wanted to talk about, but I knew that with the amount of stuff that we were going to be covering already would be challenging, was this concept that Paul is talking about here. He's challenging what is seen with an unseen change. Mm-hmm. So he's giving this inflection that by the mercies of God, present your bodies, which is seen, which is physical. So, and maybe it's a physical challenge from a spiritual change as well. So, your bodies, which is seen, physical, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your minds, by testing that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And we see here that Paul, the initial urging or the initial appealing that Paul is doing is one of a physical nature. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think that we don't realize that not combining the two is really incongruent, because one goes...
Incongruent. That's a good word.
Thank you. I used it in a sentence and everything. Yeah. My job today is done. But it just doesn't match up, because with a unseen change in us on a spiritual level, there should be a seen physical engagement of some sort, of a working, of a doing, of we have to have, we're commanded to sing praises to God. That's indicative of a internal change, but we have to move our lips. Right. We have to use our voice. Yeah. We have to raise our hands. We have to do something physical to express that. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest things I would really have liked to have kind of gone into, but I knew that, number one, it wasn't truly serving the purpose of the message, of necessarily even what the Scripture's pushing us into here. But we have to have that realization that, there are levels of unseen changes that are made that may never make itself evident, but in the majority of cases, the unseen and the seen work together. The spiritual and the physical work together, whereas the spiritual has an physical outplaying, right? So to speak, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's very much like the James stuff.
Yeah.
Of we've said this before, but we're saved by faith, no doubt about that, not by works.
Yeah.
But our works are evidence of our faith.
Right.
It's not that our works save us, but it's evidence of a changed heart. And if there's no evidence, it's really hard to know.
Yeah.
If there is genuine heart change.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're not the ones to judge.
Mm-hmm.
That's, God knows everyone's heart. But it helps. Mm-hmm. It encourages the body, and it helps other believers be encouraged by each other when our actions back up our heart change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you look at verse 2 where it's talking about don't be conformed, there's going to be physical evidence of that. Somehow, some way. There's going to be an evidence of nonconformity to what we once were. Then it's saying being transformed by the renewal of your mind. So we see that the transformation takes place internally, in the unseen, in the spiritual. But the playing out of that is that you test and discern what the will of God is, what is good and acceptable and perfect. There has to be an outplaying of this, some type of evidential physicality that is showing, whether it's in our speech, whether it's in our behavior, whether it be in the way that we love people, the way that we treat people, the way that we react to things. There's this showing out and this showing forth that there's been an inward change, a spiritual change that's been unseen, but now it is making itself evident. The fruit of what's happening internally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Any other areas that we...
I used the Phillips, Phillips paraphrase translation in verse 1 where he talks about it's our intelligent service, so to speak. And that I really enjoyed that because the Greek word there is logikos, which we get our word logical from. So he's talking about it's a reasonable service. It's not an emotional one. It's something that registers with us. And I talked about that. Not so many areas of our faith don't make sense logically.
Right.
But what we build on, the foundation of this understanding that we need to be living sacrifices. That's our intelligent worship. That's logical.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. That's like the idea of responding to God's grace with worshiping Him with every fiber of our being is just logical.
Yeah, it's just a foundational thing, man.
Yeah, it's like it only makes sense. Do you know what I mean? And that's because we talk about the mysteries of the Bible all the time, and we, expounding Scripture and figuring all this stuff out. But this is just like a duh.
Yeah, Paul.
Like, well, Jesus gave up His entire physical being and suffered for you. The logical response: give up your body and everything that you are for Him. Yeah. It's logical. This just makes sense.
Jesus gave up everything He had for you, so what makes sense to do is you give up everything for Him.
Yeah.
Give Him everything you are.
Yeah. It's not a huge, big theological, crazy thing that has to be debated by loads of theologians and all this kind of stuff. No, it just makes sense.
Here it is.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Very cool. Well, where are we heading next week?
Next week, we're going to stay with the Grow Together study, and we're going to move into verses 3 through 8 of Romans chapter 12, and we're going to look. Paul makes a couple exhortations here. He gives a couple instructions to start off that passage. Coming off of building on this, hey, everything you have, that needs to be God's. Right. You need to serve Him with everything that you have. So here's a couple instructions. Here's a couple exhortations for you. And then he goes into a little bit of an illustration as to how we do that, and then some application as to how we do that. So we're going to look at identity next week, our identity within the church body, within this family, as we're striving and seeking to grow together. We're going to see him kind of spell that out for us a little bit.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I'm excited for that. I also, one final little thought from Sunday was, it's funny how God orchestrates certain things, and Kevin's offering thought being perfectly in line with this idea of, God just doesn't just want 10% of your income.
Yeah.
He wants all of everything that you are.
Yep.
No, not just financially. Right. But like, it was just funny that led into. I completely forgot about it until there now. Whatever way you worded that.
We'll leave out the portion where he talked about forgetting one of his children.
Well, I feel like everybody's done that.
That did come through on the recording, though, so we may.
We have that part?
Yeah, we may need to take that snippet out. But speaking of the recording, before we close things out here, we'll just talk about a little change that's coming. We had hoped to phase out the live stream, so to speak, of give everybody kind of time to adjust to a new approach that we're going to be taking, but the technology has kind of forced our hand to make a little bit more of an abrupt end to the live stream than what we had planned. So,
you said, I think it was this morning or yesterday, that we were abruptly thrown into having the live stream, and we'll just be abruptly thrown out of it.
Abruptly end it. But ceasing with the live stream does not mean that we're ceasing with online content. Actually, our goal is to increase the online content and increase the relevancy of our online content as well. So you're still going to get the messages each week. It may look a little bit different, but you're still going to be getting the same message each week. It won't be at the same time. So it's not going to be at the 10:30 time that our live stream usually happens. It'll be a little bit later in the day on Sunday. But we're going to be doing some more things throughout the week. Chop for Time is going to be a staple of what we do, very important piece of that. We're going to have some devotional stuff. We're going to have some special testimony things that we've got in the planning, prayer times, things of that nature, but some more online content. So our online media isn't going anywhere. Right. It's just the live stream is no longer.
Right.
And like I said, that was something that we were praying about how to do the most healthy way. And then that decision was kind of made for us via the technical issues that we've had for going on a month now that just we can't find a remedy for.
Yeah. One thing I'd probably say as well is like, this sort of stuff, these videos, all this online content, is a lot of work. We've talked about this.
It is.
It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of people as well. So especially when we're doing other devotionals or thoughts throughout the week for different areas, whether it's upcoming sermon series or things like that, we need more faces.
Yes.
We need more people.
Yes.
And if you have any knowledge of video work or editing, and you want to serve in that capacity, please let us know. But also just encourage us as we go along in this, because this stuff adds a substantial amount of work to our weeks.
Yeah.
And we're excited to do it. We love doing it, and it's an important thing to do, to provide supplementary stuff throughout the week to encourage the church. But in response to that, it'd be nice if people watch them. So share them, watch them,
like and subscribe. I mean, that's become so cliche, but it's true with the algorithms, with everything, the way that things get out there, it really does make a difference. You subscribing to the church's YouTube channel, you liking the videos as you watch them, that makes a big difference. It really does.
Yeah, because I mean, this sort of stuff could easily take up half of our weeks, never mind the sermons that we have to do for Sunday morning and youth and all that kind of stuff. So we're diving into this a bit more, and
here we go.
Join us as we go. It'd be great. So, but we'll be back here next week for more Chop for Time, and keep an eye out for more online content throughout the week. So we'll see you then.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for round 2 of my sermon.
Oh yeah, yes. We need to record that next.
Yeah. See you guys.